Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Take a look at the device you're probably watching this on. Your smartphone. It's a pocket-sized supercomputer, a camera, a gateway to the world. But have you ever wondered how we got from a simple hello to this marvel of technology? The story of the telephone isn't as straightforward as you might think. It's a tale of forgotten inventors, a frantic race against time, and a legal battle that lasted for decades. So, let's dial back the clock and uncover the real story behind one of the most important inventions in human history. Our story doesn't start with the name you expect. It begins in the 1850s with an Italian immigrant in New York named Antonio Meucci. Meucci was a brilliant but financially struggling inventor. He discovered that he could transmit sound through electrical vibrations. He created a device he called the Teletrofono to connect his basement workshop to his wife's bedroom, as she was ill and couldn't move around much. He even filed a notice of his invention, a caveat, in 1871. However, due to his poverty and limited English, he couldn't afford the full patent fee and let the caveat lapse after 1874. He tried to demonstrate his device to Western Union, but the telegraph company seemed to lose interest, and mysteriously, his materials were never returned. Meucci's dream of bringing his invention to the world was put on hold, a footnote in history waiting to be rediscovered. Now, let's introduce the two key players who would dominate the narrative: Alexander Graham Bell and Elisha Gray. Bell, a Scottish-born professor of vocal physiology, was deeply invested in teaching the deaf and exploring acoustics. His work led him to experiment with the harmonic telegraph, a device capable of sending multiple messages over a single wire. At the same time, Elisha Gray, an equally talented inventor and co-founder of the Western Electric Company, was working on a similar concept. Both men were brilliant, both were ambitious, and both were on the verge of a breakthrough that would change the world forever. They were on a collision course, and neither knew how close the other was to the finish line. The year is 1876. The race to invent the telephone is at a fever pitch. Both Bell and Gray are separately working on a device that can transmit speech electrically. The climax of this race occurred on one fateful day, February 14th, 1876. On that Valentine's Day, a lawyer representing Alexander Graham Bell rushed to the U.S. Patent Office in Washington, D.C. to file a patent application for the telephone. Just a few hours later, on the very same day, Elisha Gray arrived at the same patent office to file a caveat, a notice of intent to file a patent for his own telephone design. Bell's application was filed first, and because of this, he was awarded U.S. Patent 174,465, arguably the most valuable patent in history. The timing was so incredibly close that it has fueled controversy for over a century. Did Bell's lawyer get a tip-off? Did Bell somehow see Gray's design? The debate continues to this day. With the patent secured, Bell still needed to get his device to actually work consistently. The breakthrough moment came on March 10, 1876. Working in his Boston laboratory with his assistant, Thomas Watson, Bell was tinkering with his liquid transmitter. According to the legend, Bell accidentally spilled some battery acid and shouted into the device, "Mr. Watson, come here. I want to see you." In another room, Watson, listening at the receiving end, heard the words clearly through the machine. It was the first successful transmission of clear speech over a wire. Those simple words marked the birth of the telephone and the dawn of a new era in communication. Can you imagine the sheer excitement in that lab? The realization that they had just bridged distance with a human voice for the very first time. It was a moment that would echo through history. The invention was one thing. Turning it into a business was another. Bell offered to sell his patent to Western Union for $100,000, but the telegraph giant, confident in its existing technology, dismissed the telephone as a mere electrical toy. This turned out to be one of the biggest business blunders in history. Undeterred, Bell and his financial backers, Gardner, Hubbard, and Thomas Sanders, formed the Bell Telephone Company in 1877. The telephone's popularity exploded. Within a decade, over 150,000 people in the U.S. had telephones in their homes and offices. However, this success brought on a legal storm. The Bell Company had to defend its patent in over 600 lawsuits, including a major case against Western Union, which had eventually realized its mistake and partnered with Elisha Gray. The most significant challenge came from the U.S. government itself, which, prompted by Antonio Meucci's claims, attempted to annul Bell's patent. Bell ultimately won the legal battles, securing his company's monopoly and cementing his name in the public consciousness as the father of the telephone. The early telephones were clunky, wooden boxes. You had to shout into a mouthpiece and hold a separate receiver to your ear. To make a call, you'd crank a handle to alert a human operator at a central switchboard, who would then manually connect your line to the person you wanted to talk to. It was a far cry from the instant, global connections we have today. The evolution from these manual switchboards to direct dialing systems in the early 20th century was a massive leap forward. Then came push-button phones in the 1960s, replacing the iconic rotary dial and introducing touch-tone technology, which paved the way for things like automated phone menus. Each step simplified the process and made communication more accessible. The real revolution, however, began with the concept of taking the phone with you. The first mobile phones emerged in the 1980s. These were not the sleek devices we know today. They were massive, expensive brick phones like the Motorola Dynatc 8000X. It weighed nearly 2 pounds, cost thousands of dollars, and had a battery life of about 30 minutes of talk time. Yet, it was revolutionary. For the first time, you weren't tethered to a wall. Communication was becoming truly personal and portable. Throughout the 90s, phones got smaller, cheaper, and added new features like text messaging and basic games. Remember Snake? That was a game changer. The flip phone became a style icon. We were on the brink of another massive transformation. Then, in 2007, everything changed again. Steve Jobs walked onto a stage and introduced the first iPhone. It combined 3 things: a widescreen iPod with touch controls, a revolutionary mobile phone, and a breakthrough internet communicator. It wasn't just a phone anymore. It was a smartphone. It replaced physical keyboards with a multi-touch screen, introduced the App Store, and put the full power of the internet in our pockets. This single device kicked off the smartphone era. Competitors like Android quickly followed, and a new race began, not for patents, but for features, apps, and user experience. The smartphone has reshaped almost every aspect of our lives, from how we work and socialize to how we navigate and entertain ourselves. So, from Antonio Meucci's simple Teletrofono designed to help his wife through Bell's famous first call and the fierce patent wars, to the brick phones of the 80s and the smartphone revolution, the journey has been incredible. The next time you FaceTime a loved one across the ocean or order food with a few taps, take a moment to appreciate the century and a half of innovation, controversy, and genius that made it all possible. What started as a simple desire to send a voice over a wire has evolved into a device that connects billions of us in ways its creators could have never imagined. What do you think the future of communication holds? Where do we go from here? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this journey through history, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories behind our world. See you in the next one.